Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Livin The Dream podcast. My name is Rishi Barran. I am a course director at Full Sail University, the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, and I've spent more than 15 years in the TV business myself. But what's great about this podcast is I get to feature the up-and-coming stars of this business who are our graduates who've done great things. And there haven't been many that have accomplished as much in a short period of time as our guest today, Taylor Schaub. He joins us from KGET-TV in Bakersfield, California, where he is the sports director. He started there as a news reporter in, I believe, November of 2019. And another special thing about Taylor, he is a member of our first graduating class at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. So welcome, Taylor. Thanks for some time with us today. I know you're busy. I'm glad you're able to fit us in.
Well, thank you, Rishi. I've never heard the term star used so loosely, but I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me on here, and that intro is very nice.
Well, thank you. And this has been a lot of fun. We're still really early in the development of this podcast, but it's a good chance for anyone, whether it be current students, other alumni, anyone in the Full Sail community, and really anyone in the world that wants to get some insight from someone who's doing it at a high level. I can speak extremely well of what Taylor has done so far, and you're going to get to hear about it a little bit today. But to review the concept of what this podcast is all about, it's a chance to live the dream through the eyes of someone who's doing it. And we have our big 3 questions we'll get answered during the course of this, which are essentially, how did the dream start? How is it living the dream now? And where will your next dream lead you? And Taylor and I were joking before we started this that he's pretty long-winded guy. He's like, we may only get to 3 questions in the time we have, but we'll get in all we can. So Taylor, why don't we start with the first big question? Where did the dream start for you?
Well, some people in the program may know, certainly the instructors know, both my parents worked in broadcasts. So I was around TV in a very unique way from an early age. So many sportscasters get started in this industry because they love sports, whether they played them or they watched them on TV. They might have pointed at a sports center anchor and said, I want to be like that. Well, for me, it was, I kind of want to be like my dad. I kind of want to be like my mom. I remember the news truck back when we were using news trucks to only do live shots. We didn't have backpacks, pulling up to my dad's, or my house, I should say, every day when I was a kid. And I walked into that thing thinking it was like the Star Trek Enterprise in there. Like there was all the editors and I didn't know what any of it did. There's a satellite and I'm like, wait, this is how you make TV? And like at the end of the day, my dad gets to do something different every single day. He was in news. And as I kind of progressed, as I got older, I said, I really love sports. I love television. I love the industry of television. I'm kind of a nerd about the industry of television at 15, 16 years old. I don't know anybody else that is. And I want to find a way to marry these two together. And it was kind of hard for me because I wasn't a great student in high school. There were schools that, like Syracuse that you knew of that you could do it at, but I just didn't see the path to actually get myself there as much as I loved it. And it's funny because it wasn't until my senior year of high school that somebody had actually given me an opportunity to do anything on air. And it was when it was my first semester. And like I said, I was not a good student. And I like to say that for kids out there because it allows them to understand the past doesn't matter. It's what you do in the present going forward. One of my teachers, who was also the co-athletic director, came to me and he said, I know you really like sports. You don't really play anything except golf. And he goes, we need somebody to do play-by-play for high school football and high school basketball. I was like, I've never done play-by-play in my life. But he's like, I think you can do it. It's high school. There's 15 parents watching it. If you make a mistake, it doesn't really matter. All the kids on the team. They're all your friends. Like, it will be perfect for you. You don't even have to get say the other kids' names on the other team. Just focus on our team. So I did it and it was a blast. And I would go time and time again to all of the games. And then I did high school basketball and I just kind of put my own spin on it. And I was not good at it. To this day, I'm still bad at play-by-play. But it was like that little bit of an entrance into it where I just got the bug and I said, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be in front of the camera or lend my voice to something. So from that point, I go, I have to do this at the next level. I have to do this in college. But my grades were not going to take me to any of the places where I could have, or I could have at the level that I wanted to. So I looked into the junior college routes. I looked into everything to get me to where I could go eventually. And it was funny because the summer after I graduated, I had met a guy who, funny enough, put me in touch with a independent league baseball team. And he asked me if I wanted to come out, I told him what I'd done, do a little sideline reporting, do a little everything for community access television, right? So maybe 7 people watching now, even less than the stream of high school football. And it was so cool because, even though it was independent league, it was literally the lowest league of baseball. These guys were professionals in my mind. And I felt like I'm doing a sideline report with this guy. It's like I'm interviewing the next, MLB player, whoever it is. And that was a blast. And he said, hey, I remember him telling me, hey, you're pretty good at the sideline. You're pretty good at talking. You're not that good at play-by-play. I remember him telling me that because, there's just too many things going on, like the X's and O's, and I was always late to it. But he goes, you're just good at talking. And I was like, thank you. He goes, I run the radio station at Dominican University in San Rafael. And I'd like you to come on, do a couple of things this summer. We really don't have any programming. We pretty much just play music on it during the summer. And then during the year, we, broadcast all the games. It's not much of a department, but, come on, do a little something. So that summer, I enrolled in a class so I could be a part of it. I can't even tell you what the class was. And he gave me a radio show, and I named it In the Zone. And I remember that my middle name is Williams. And we had to have a stage name. Everybody there had to have a stage name. So I was Taylor Williams. And I just had a blast with it. I probably did like 12 episodes. It was once a week on Thursdays. And I kind of leveraged my parents' connections a little bit because I was like, okay, my dad knows this guy. He knows this sportscaster at this radio station, and that's how I met some of who were going to be my mentors later on, like a Larry Beal, who was at ESPN, is now at ABC7 in San Francisco. I literally cold called the guy because my mom knew him, and it was like, will you be on my radio show? and he did it because, you find in this industry that the great sportscasters, the great people behind the scenes, they want to give back to the next generation. And they all did. And through that series of events, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with creating stuff. I got super passionate. I was doing stuff, digitally, and all my friends were looking at this like, oh, this is really, really cool. I think some were probably laughing like, does he really think he's going to like make a radio show out of this or a podcast or whatever? And I fell in love with it. I wanted to do it. I wanted to go to Dominican. And then one day I was listening to a podcast. It was the Bill Simmons podcast. And Dan Patrick was on talking about the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, saying they were launching this thing. I had no idea what it was. Nobody had any idea what it was because it hadn't been invented yet. But it was everything that I wanted. It was everything that I needed. And it felt like the shot that I had to take. And I was nervous. And I went up to my mom's room. I said, we have to go to Orlando, Florida. She's like, what do you mean we have to go to Orlando? I said, I looked it up. They're having this like behind the scenes tour. I have to be there. This is the school for me. This is my shot. And because we went there, it was amazing. You see the studio, you're like, how is this even possible? How does this exist? And because it was such a new program, I had a shot to actually get in, right? So it was like the past all of a sudden was wiped away. I didn't have to go through 2 years of junior college just to get to the point where I could start. No, I could start right away. And, before I left, my mom was, she was a little worried about it because it was across the country. She didn't know anything about it. We hadn't gotten to meet Gus yet, who's the program director, because it was like his first week. He was just settling in. We were on our way to the airport, and I tried to reach out to Gus for a week being there, a little less than a week. Finally, he calls us when we're on our way back to the airport. He's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I just settled into my office. If you have time to talk, you're still here. You can come by right now. I'd love to chat with you about the program. We called American Airlines, pushed our flight, paid the cost, turned the car around, went back, talked to Gus for an hour. And I think I was enrolled like a week and a half later.
It's crazy that you put so much faith in us because, as you said, when you heard about it on the podcast, the structure wasn't even in place. Even while you were a student, we were still adding classes that hadn't been invented yet, that the instructors were getting hired as you were going through the program. So that faith that you put into the program, why did you believe that this was going to work for you?
You know, it's interesting. So much of it has to do with that conversation with Gus, right? Because I am somebody where I felt this way my entire life, where if I believe you to my core, like when we're having a conversation, then I'll follow you. And sometimes that has steered me wrong, but I just believed what he was saying, and he was so passionate, and he had the credentials to back it up, right? Like, this guy's an Emmy award-winning producer at ESPN. He's not, some guy you'd never heard of from some bodunk town. No, he had the credentials, but he had the passion too. And he was like, listen, I can't tell you it's going to work out perfectly for you, but I can tell you that this is everything you want and more. And we just aligned. That it was almost like synergy in that moment, where it was everything that I had wanted. And it also felt like this was my chance to forget about the past, right? It was to forget about the fact that I wasn't a great student, that I did probably make way too many mistakes in high school, that stopped me from having the ability to go to maybe some other schools that were more established. And also, it was the excitement about being part of something that had never been done before. And how many times in your life do you get to be a part of that? And you see a vision from Dan Patrick to Gus to everybody like you, Rishi, that was hired on out to build out the infrastructure of that, where the personal investment that I have in the Dan Patrick School, I don't know if I'll ever get that again. It's not every job that I'll get hired in for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be part of the start of it. I'm not part of the start of KGET. I'm just, the 20th sports director in the history of KGET. But at the Dan Patrick School, I was part of the first class. Every single class that has been taught since the day I graduated has had some kernel of me and Adrian Donnelly and Clay Schrager and Tyler Baronsky that have made an impact, and has changed the way that you guys have done one lesson or maybe even one assignment, because we made a little bit of an impact in each one of those days that we were there. And to me, I mean, that's just amazing. And not to mention everything that I learned. So it's a twofold answer, really, where it was being a part of something new, but also trusting so much in Gus that I was going to get to forget about my past, and I was just going to get to focus on the future. And that's exactly what I did. And, being a student there, I remember having a conversation with you, Rishi, where, it blew your mind that I wasn't a good student in high school.
I did. Yeah, I was shocked.
I was getting all 90s and 100s, or well, maybe not 100, but all 90s or 95s on everything. And it's like, I was hoping to get, an 80 in high school. That was great.
Well, that did surprise me, and you weren't the only one. There were several other students who were just excellent students in our program, and not just like good at the job, right? It's one thing to be a good broadcaster. It's another thing to follow directions, to do what you're asked to do, to, pay that close attention to detail. And you were great with that. And look, we could spend 25 podcasts going through all your experiences at school, but it was an amazing moment when you and Tyler and Dean and Adrian and Clay all walked that first ceremony. Today, I know we'll never forget. One thing I was always curious about, obviously all of you have shared certain things with me with my conversations, but I kind of want to take everybody behind the scenes now. So while you're going through the program with this group of students, not knowing where you're going to end up, because we're still kind of getting the hang of what we're doing ourselves, what kind of conversations would you have behind the scenes about where the program was leading you?
It's funny. We all had a lot of faith in you guys, like a lot, but there's always those questions of like, wait, we don't even know what's happening in 2 months. Like you have like an idea, like they'll tell you, oh, this is project and portfolio 6. And you're like, wait, what does that mean though? Exactly. I think it was the fact for us personally that you guys allowed us in. You guys developed relationships with us and said, hey, we're going along this journey with you. That calmed us down. Because I remember having conversations with Tyler about it, where it's like, in what other program in college or high school or master's degrees or what else that you could just text your instructor or email your instructor or Google chat with your instructor, and he's like gonna get back to you, and he's gonna care about the way that you're writing this lead in. that was fascinating to me. So I think, yeah, it was a little scary going through and saying, oh my God, like this thing's not built out yet. And like we're trusting implicitly in these guys, but you never were trying to close the curtain on us and be like, trust me, it will be great. Like, no, you were like, yeah, we're still building this thing out. Oh, hold on. Gus actually needs to teach this class this month because that instructor is not going to be here for 2 more months. But trust me, he's going to be great. And you guys all know how great Gus is. And, you know, Gus is going to be hard on you guys too. And it's almost like, you know, the things that the instructors did to go above and beyond really helped ease a lot of that uncertainty. Like Gus teaching us, it was whatever
Project and Portfolio 6.
Yeah, Project and Portfolio 6. He did 30-minute like commentaries on each one of our videos, on each one of our assignments. He didn't have to do that. Being the program director, also teaching a class in that moment, probably being stressed about 7 million things. He could have just been like, here's your 90, or here's your 80, or here's your 70, here's 2 paragraphs of feedback, and if you have any other questions, ask me. But he didn't do that. He spent hours of his own time probably going through and doing that because he cared. And showing us that how much you guys cared, I mean, it really put a lot at ease. I never really felt like there was no direction. I always actually felt like there was so much direction in that program that, you know, sometimes you were like, wow, how am I this lucky? And how are there 20 different people that I could go to? You know, where there was, I mean, it got to the point for me personally where I was like, there's instructors in this every instructor I feel like I could go to. Plus I could go to Eric Saperstein, you know, who worked at Golf Channel. I could go to Josh Mora, who did sports in, you know, Chicago. I was like, the network kept growing and it kept being good people. You never pointed, there was never a bad egg per se, right? You never felt like you had an instructor that was like, oh man, I hope I never get that person again. It was like, we get Condren again? Wait, Rishi's switching to the last one? Like, that's fantastic. So that's how it was for us.
All right, we're talking to Taylor Schaub, sports director at KGET-TV in Bakersfield, California. We're going to get to the next big question in a second, but I do want to transition from college to where you are now. And that was the process between graduation and getting that first job. And it wasn't a long process, it was like a month for you, but I'm sure it felt like a lot more. What were some of the highlights of that process for you?
Felt like a lifetime. And, you know, we had plenty of conversations through that. I was so, you know, I look back on it too, because I've given advice to people since, and I was so like, I mean, the idea of me needing to have a job the day I graduated, which is an admirable goal, and like you should want that, obviously, but it was like life or death for me. And I was like, and you look back and you're like, that's so not realistic. Like, you're not living on planet Earth. You might as well be Elon Musk wanting to get to Mars. Like, it was so crazy to me, but I was happy that I had it because it pushed me. And that process was really difficult, right? It was a lot of applications and a lot of non-responses, but there were the few responses that I did get, you know, because it seems like to other people, hey, 4 or 5 stations got back to me, 2 made offers to me. That's huge, and it is. But, you know, people also don't realize the 100 other stations that never even sent an email back, right? That's the way this game works. That's the way life works. And it was hard. It was hard when you would, you know, sometimes it was even worse when you would get contacted back and then you would send in your stuff and you go, oh, this job's mine. I got it. They responded to me. And then, you know, they wouldn't respond or you wouldn't get it and you would keep pushing. And, you know, when I was lucky enough to get my first offer, that was incredible. And it was like, okay, I've kind of made it, but there was still something more that I wanted, and I didn't know what it was. It wasn't necessarily, it had to be a bigger market or it had to be this. I didn't know, it didn't feel 100% right to me, but I also was completely thrilled to take it, right? It was a great offer. And we should preface this by saying, you know, I started in news. So these were all news offers. And And then when the Bakersfield offer came out of nowhere, I've told this story before, but I can do it quickly again, where I just got a call from somebody who was a friend of my mom's, who was kind of mentoring me a little bit. And he put me in contact with the news director. I was in California at the time, drove to Bakersfield, had the interview, and got the offer after a 7-hour interview, which blew my mind. And I don't know if that will ever happen to 99.999% of people in this world, but when that happens to you, something just feels like it clicks. Getting that second offer felt so right, but it was also moving across the country again, and there was so much that went into it. But I knew KGET was the #1 station. It was my opportunity to learn so much, to basically go to grad school off of the Dan Patrick School. At that point, I saw my journey in news. There was a lot of things that coming out of the Dan Patrick School that I loved about sportscasting, but it just didn't feel like I was meant to be a sportscaster, because my storytelling in terms of packages, in terms of, reporting, felt so much stronger than my ability to deliver highlights. Obviously, we talked about my ability to do play-by-play, which, we it's not great, but there were so many things along the way that said, maybe you should try news, maybe you should get into news. And I did, and I loved it at KGET for a year. And we'll go into the, where I am right now. But, that journey, that 4-week, 5-week journey for me, it was crazy. But, going back and forth between stations, learning how to kind of negotiate a little bit. But it taught me so much in that time frame, just like the first year at KGET taught me, just like the 2 years at Full Sail taught me. There's these little moments in your life, in your career too, that you can look back on and say, wow, how is it that I learned that much in a month? Or how is it that I learned that much in 6 months or a year? Or, and that's what's fascinating to me is every step of these journeys, I learned so much, and I don't realize it because I'm exhausted the next day, but 6 months later, a year later, I go, I have that experience.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And I love your analogy to grad school. I use that analogy sometimes too, that first job basically is that. The difference between going to grad school and that job, well, there are many differences, but one of the better ones is they're paying you, right? They might not pay you a lot. You might not be making the money you want to make eventually, but it is that kind of an experience. And that's, I know for me, in my career, that my first 7 months working as a news videographer in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that was my grad school, and that was amazing, and I learned so much. So that leads me to my next big question. You touched on it a little bit, but what's it like living the dream right now?
Sometimes I have to pinch myself, and I don't say that as like some dorky analogy, because you wake up every day and you realize that your job is to be on TV and your job is to talk about sports. And yeah, it's super stressful, and it's 12 to 13 hour days most of the time, like today will be. But you just get to go talk. Like at the essence of what we do, it's tell a story and talk to people on the other side of the television screen. And if you can't gather from this conversation that I like to talk, that should be the #1 thing, because I just love it so much. And sometimes I feel like I love it a little too much, where it's like, it does hurt other parts of my life. And I know you wanted to get into the work-life balance part, but I really do. I mean, I love editing. I love shooting. I love being on camera. It's funny, Rishi, that being on camera was the hardest part to get to love. I always thought that would be the easiest one, but no, because you have to be comfortable with yourself on camera. You have to be comfortable making mistakes on camera and showing all of your warts. It's easy to hide behind editing. It's easy to hide behind, so many different aspects of this industry. But when you're on camera and the lights are on and it's 3 minutes or it's an hour-long show that you're anchoring, you can't. But to me, every day it's a different challenge, right? Every day, and especially in sports, because I'm covering so many different sports that a lot of them I knew nothing about. I'm doing a series right now on the Olympics. You think I know anything about fencing? No. Now I do. I actually learned how to fence. I mean, barely, but like going through these processes, right? I didn't know a lot about hockey. I grew up in, Northern California. Sure, we have the Sharks, but like, let me tell you, it's not hockey country in Northern California. So I didn't know a ton about hockey. I didn't, but we have a minor league hockey team here. I had to become a pseudo expert really quick, right? Same with soccer. And now I really like soccer. There's a lot of these things for me where I got to learn so much in news, but now in sports, it's like in news, I got to learn how to tell a story for a TV station. I got to learn how to do a package. I got to learn how to, do breaking news, do live shots, all of these things. In sports, I got to learn how to be myself on TV. And that was the biggest fundamental change. And you can ask anybody at my station and they'll say, what's the biggest difference between Taylor in news and Taylor in sports? And they'll say, well, he's himself in sports. In news, he was a great storyteller. He was a great reporter. He could do a lot of different things. He was one of our most versatile assets, but he was always trying to be something else.
And I like how you said that news prepared you so well for sports too, because you have blossomed, you have turned that leaf. I think you're having more fun from what I've heard you say. And for just a little background, Taylor worked in news for about a year before you transitioned to sports director?
A little over a year. And I worked multiple shifts, including the morning reporter shift. It's crazy. I think we've talked about all the experiences I've had, from covering wildfires in California to being in the middle of standoffs to
bullets flying by your head.
Yeah, well, exactly. To even something like the president coming to town and learning how to prepare for that, to be a part of team coverage for that. There's so many different assets in news that are so valuable. My time in news, especially here at KGET, was, this is still grad school. But it was so valuable and it was so needed, and it was so needed right after Full Sail, because Full Sail taught me all of these tools, but I needed to use them right away. I just knew I needed to use them. Doesn't mean you have to get a job a month after, or or even 5 months after. You work to get to that point, but it's like Full Sail prepares you. And then KGET for me took me to the point of like, I got this now. All these things that they explained to me, it's like, oh, okay, now I can harness them. And even some things that KGET had never seen before, right? Because Full Sail is always on the cutting edge. And then when I got to sports and they said, Taylor, we trust you to run this department. Is it a department of one? Yes, it is. But we trust you to be so independent, because not only do you know how to be a news reporter in our system, but you also love sports, have a passion for sports, went to sportscasting school, and you have all these other tools that you learned from Full Sail. And my news director has said this as much, that so many of those assets that I have, that I learned, technology wise, the ability to be independent, allowed me to flourish as a sports director, where it's like, I have an idea of what set design looks like because of Full Sail, because I took classes in OBS. So I'm like, well, if I can create a virtual show, then why can't I create a show, in the third dimension? And I helped design a set for our football show. I helped design the new graphics. I had an idea of what the color schemes would look like. That's crazy to me, where I can do that. I can also anchor the show. I can also put together packages for the show. And it all comes together in this arc where it's, I get to live this dream every single day and get to do so much within it that I'm never bored, right? Like I can't imagine sitting at a desk every day and punching in numbers. And, we started this conversation earlier. I said, one of my friends, he works in finance in San Francisco. I am sure he is crushing it and making, very, very good money. And I am so happy for him. But I've seen what those Excel spreadsheets look like. And that is not the life that I need. It is just not. I would take getting to learn equestrian yesterday morning, or hosting a high school football show, or getting sent to Las Vegas to cover a Big West tournament every single day of the week. Heck, I'd take, shooting high school swimming and tennis over that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I think it's so important to love what you do. And to me, I've been fortunate to have, moved up well enough in this industry to do well enough. Not, nobody's getting rich off it in my household, but what I've learned is the experiences outweigh everything else. And even though I might not make as much as someone, and with my skill set, I'm sure I could make more money doing other things. But what I've kind of seen over time is if you're in that extra kind of rich bracket, the difference is just kind of the quality of things, right? You're doing the same stuff. You're eating a great meal. It's just a little bit less pricey, right? You're driving a car that's fine. It's just not quite as pricey. You're staying in a nice enough hotel, just not quite as nice. So to me, I think it's well worth that sacrifice to do what you're doing.
I love it. I mean, it's simply that. It's not easy. It's a physical and mental toll on your body that you wouldn't expect from the outside looking in. If you weren't somebody that was in this industry at all, the lack of sleep sometimes, and really taking care of your body is something that, it's funny now that I'm covering sports and I when I listen to athletes talk about taking care of themselves, especially athletes that, get a little older, you listen to like a Chris Paul or LeBron or somebody. And the difference is, I mean, in 2 years, I noticed that I'm 22 years old, but like I could see the path of burning myself out if you don't do certain things. If you're eating really poorly and not checking in on yourself, yeah, sure. It's like anything that you go at 100%. And I'm somebody that, probably my biggest fault in all of this, there's things I'm not good at, but my biggest fault is not knowing when to turn off the switch.
And I'm like that too, Taylor. Like it's, some people are just quote unquote achievers and they like to, no matter what they got, they're going to keep trying to do more. Right. But
Yeah.
that really transitions into what we were speaking about slightly earlier, which is work-life balance. How have you been able to get better at that during your first couple of years in the business?
I think the biggest thing for me was, I'm in a relationship, so that really helps where, when you build normalcy around your life, that's really good. Staying in contact with the people that you love, that you care about, friends, family, that's really good because it sets up the fact that, hey, this isn't my whole life. It's a really big part of my life. It's a part of my life that I love, but it's not my whole life. Because sometimes you can live or die by a highlight if you are this invested, and that's not healthy necessarily, right? You want to do the best you humanly can do at it, cut it the best, write it the best. But sometimes you're going to get up there and you're going to flub a name. And if you let that sit with you for a day, that is so toxic. So for me, it's surrounding myself with people, both in my work environment, but also my family, my friends that are constantly positive. And it's also finding the little other things that keep me healthy, right? I'm a big gym guy. And like, I got away from that when I first started working here because I don't have time for that. That was my mindset, right? Like, I don't have time for that. And that was really bad for my mental health. I knew it was, but I kept not going. And it wasn't, and it's not like all of a sudden I looked really bad on camera or anything, but I felt bad. I felt exhausted. I noticed it the most actually when I went to the night side schedule and I was on the 11 o'clock sportscast, and sometimes I was just like so tired. I'd worked all day, I'd shot in the heat, I'd done all these things. I'm like, you're 22 years old. You have friends out that are out till like 3 a.m. They got energy. Like, why can't you? And sure, they're not working as hard as you, but like, man, you shouldn't be like falling asleep and feeling like there were some times where I felt like it was affecting me, like in my sportscast, right? That I was just tired. I didn't have the energy to bring it. It's like, you should have the energy to bring it 3 minutes, Taylor. Come on. So, working out in the morning, I'm eating healthier definitely than I was before because it's so easy. I mean, let me tell you, all of you something, and this, Rishi, about a newsroom. all they want to do is bring in cake.
Yeah,
Don't ask me
definitely.
why, but cake and cookies. Every day it's somebody's birthday, right? Stay away. Stay away. It's bad. But it's little things that have helped me. I'm not perfect at it. I'm worse than a lot of people. I will be the first one to admit that work-life balance is still something that I struggle with, but it's something that if you're cognizant of, you're going to be a heck of a lot better than the guy that's not or the girl that's not.
I completely agree on all counts. This is Taylor Schaub chatting with me here on the Livin The Dream podcast, and he is one of the first members of our graduating class at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting back in, I believe, October of 2019, I want to say. So
yeah, October, late October.
Very special day for all of us. And now he's doing great things at KGET. Taylor, one thing I want to touch on before we move on to the third big question is what you're doing right now, Taylor's Trials. So you talked about being able to, as the sports director, have creative input, which I can tell you from being a past sports director, it's the greatest thing to have input and so much control over your own shows. One of the things that you've done is create a series where you're essentially out competing in sports you don't know too well. You mentioned equestrian and archery. What did you say? Fencing.
Archery is going to be one of them.
All right. So yeah. I'm touching on all of them. Fencing you mentioned earlier. But what is it like to be able to do those type of stories where you can have fun with them and include yourself in them?
Well, Rishi, I got to tell you, the craziest part about this is I came up with this idea a while ago. And the purpose of the idea was everybody 2 weeks every 4 years tunes into all of these summer sports. And some of them we know really well. We know the athletes. Some of them we don't know at all. And the only exposure they get is during the Olympics. And if a kid watches fencing and says, Mom, I want to do that, where do they do it? Where in their backyard do they do it? Do they Google a fencing place? Maybe. Well, why can't we show them where? And with no local athletes from Kern County in the Olympics this year, I was wondering, how do I tailor our coverage around this? And for whatever reason, people love to watch the sports director, same with the weatherman. There's this or weatherwoman go out there and be very active. Like there's something about it that they love to watch us a little bit make a fool of ourselves, but I didn't want that to be exactly what this piece was. I didn't want to go out there and make fun of the sport, right? I wanted to go out there and show this is where you can do it. And this is how hard it really is. And we're going to learn about this sport. I'm going to go out there and try this sport. And I'm going to show you that, hey, it's a lot of fun to do this. It's really hard. You're going to get some more appreciation for these Olympians. Not that you didn't have enough already, but you're going to have a lot more after you watch me. But also, you can do this in your own backyard too. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And it morphed into 10 sports in 10 days. And that's a lot. And what happened through the process of this, and I'm 5 down, by the way. I still have 5.
Let me just ask you. So when you say 10 sports in 10 days, does that mean you're recording these all in advance and then you're showing them back to back to back? Okay.
Yes, they air. I should say 10 weekdays too. They air during the weekdays of the Olympics, and they're going to air in a show called Olympic Zone, which leads into our primetime coverage of the Olympics. So it's 10 different sports, but obviously track and field that encompasses a lot of different events, one sport. Put it like that. Same with gymnastics, a lot of different events, one sport in one day. Whereas fencing, one sport, one day as well. We are doing a bunch of different, I wish I had the list for you, but so far I've done gymnastics, I've done track and field, I've done fencing, I've done equestrian, I've done beach volleyball. Sometimes I've done them with, people that are high level teachers that have taught me. Some are people on their way to the Olympics. They're on junior national teams. Today, in fact, at 5:00 Pacific time, I'm going to go spar with a member of the U.S. junior national boxing team.
Wow.
Go into the Pan
I'm glad we did this now before you got a black eye, right?
Exactly. No face. I told them that. But for me, it's so exciting. And the other thing on a personal level, and I've talked to some of my management about this, is yeah, it's a blast, right? You get to do this. It's really fun. What other job allows you the ability to do this? I know people will really enjoy watching it. I'll enjoy putting them together. But man, is it cool to experience it as a sports director, as somebody to experience what these people go through and getting it to do it with people that compete at a high level, what they go through, what they put their bodies through. I mean, it was a whole nother lens to me because I understand football, I understand basketball, I understand baseball, even hockey now, soccer, like the pain threshold that they go through on a high level. But I didn't know what somebody in track and field goes. Do you know how sore you are after you do the long jump or the hurdle? Because I do now. Like I do understand that a little bit, right? Just a tiny bit. And that's the fascinating part for me is like, I get to go through this. And this is just for me on a personal level. This has nothing to do with the series, but it goes back to the point of this job where you get to have these experiences that you never thought you would, right? Like who in 2 weeks of shooting, sporadically is going to get to do all of these things in their life.
Yeah, I had a news director who wasn't, just to be fair, wasn't my favorite news director, but he used to describe being involved in broadcasting as, or really any journalism for that matter, as kind of the man of meager means' way of seeing the world, right? You might not be rich, but you're getting to do stuff nobody gets to do. And it's really cool that you get to experience that through your series. And the other thing, Taylor, that stands out when listening to you really over these last 45 minutes or so we've been talking is just your passion for what you do and how much you care about the viewers, how much you care about the athletes you interview. You're in it for all the right reasons. And because of that, I think it's going to lead you to fulfillment for a long time. And that leads me to the final big question. What's the next big dream you're chasing? We're always out there trying to continue to up our craft. What's the next dream for you?
It's funny. Like I've thought a lot about this, not just because you told me that was going to be, but it's always hard for me because I'm ever evolving, right? Like when I first got into this, I thought I had one idea of it, and then you go through and you find things you like and you don't like. What I really want to do wherever I go next, whatever I do next, is have more time to tell in-depth stories. I don't want to pick a market. I don't want to pick a place. I don't want to pick an idea of what I have to be, because what I found in some of that, and even my friends, and like we all get tripped up in cities and markets and that game. And like, I'm not saying that I never have. It's just what I found is some people are in market 1 and miserable, and some people are in market 25 and thriving.
And I know people who are both that are in market 1 and miserable, and people who are in market 25 who are thriving. So I can confirm that.
Yeah. And for me, I love having time to tell stories, not just time in terms of, hey, you get 3 days to do this. That's not realistic. We work in broadcast television. That's not realistic. But time to go out and shoot something that's not, hey, this is just a minute 10, piece. It's like, I want to work for people, because right now I work for people that care, that allow me to try things, that say, Taylor's Trials, what's that? Oh, that's kind of cool. Let's run with it. Because to me, it's all about who you work for and who you work with. And I don't need to be a sports director in my next job. I'm not going to be. I know that. But if I'm surrounded by people that allow me to tell the type of stories that I love to tell, that have this same kind of relationship with, athletes and communities, and they care about them, then that to me, and we just have more resources to do so, then that's the perfect job, right? It's the perfect middle jumping job to wherever I go on the biggest, wherever, that is my peak, which I don't know yet. And I don't, I can have ideas of, oh, I'd love to work for ESPN like everybody does. But I don't know if that's the case today. Because
go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's because I thought that I was going to go through this journey in news. And then I got this opportunity to go through it in sports. And what it's taught me is you don't know what the future is going to hold. You can have ideas. You can certainly be passionate about chasing one of those ideas, but you have to just allow life to come at you a little bit. And you have to allow yourself to be open to these certain things. You have to allow yourself to get on the horse and do the jump. And that to me is what I've allowed myself to do in these last 6 months. I've allowed myself to say, Taylor, you are terrible at doing hockey highlights, but you're going to get good at it. You are going to get good at it. You are going to say his name correctly. Even if you have to say it 50 times first, you're going to say that Eastern European name correctly. And you're going to get on that horse and you're going to jump over the thing that is this high. And you've never been on a horse before. And it's scary. And I get it. But that's why I love this. Because I don't know what tomorrow holds. I really don't. I have ideas. I have dreams. But I know what I love to do right now. And if I can keep doing that every day for the rest of my life or some variation of it, then I'm going to be happy, right? That's
well, for you to have that perspective at age 22 is amazing, because I agree with everything you say. And, I didn't have it at 22 where I understood all those things, because you're right. A lot of people chase the wrong things, right? Market numbers, money, and not that those aren't good. Trust me, they're good. You want them. But it's all about being fulfilled with what you're doing. And that's wonderful. And I'm so happy to hear that. And yes, those hockey names can be really hard to pronounce. So keep working on that. Okay.
It's very difficult.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say my computer's at 1% and I don't know where the charger is.
All right. Well, let me just hit you real quick with one other question. Well, why don't we just go to our quick finish? I had one other question, but dream scenarios for you. Okay. So you got to give me a quick answer for all of these. I'm going to throw 7 things at you and then you give me your answer. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Dream golf foursome. I know you're a big golf guy. Who would be in your golf foursome?
Oh, this is a good one. Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods. Those are 2 easy locks, and John Daly.
Oh, that's good. I like John Daly. I have met him, and he is a character. I thought you were going to say Mac McDonald, me, and Mike Stanton, but that's fine. All right. Dream golf trip. You can go anywhere to play golf for a weekend. Where are you going?
I've actually thought about this a lot, because the easy thing is Pebble, because on 17 Mile Drive, you can play all of those. I'd rather go to Scotland. I'd want to play the old course and play all of the traditional old school links courses.
I love that. My father-in-law has done that, and hopefully I will join him to do that one day. Dream event to cover.
Masters.
Yeah, me too. I still haven't done that. That's great.
Yeah.
Gordy got to play there.
Yeah, I know. I know the lottery story. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Dream studio setup. I know you like your bells and whistles when you're performing. What would the setup look like for you?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. I love big walls, right? And I basically love to think about it almost like as a mix of the Turner studio and the big ESPN Sports Center studios, where sometimes I wouldn't even go full screen with stuff. I can just use the walls as camera shots, right? If I'm throwing up a full screen graphic, I can just have like a jib shot go to a large wall monitor and no bevels. Like you have the bevel behind you in that shot. I can't stand like the look of the cutoff. I understand why they do it. It's a lot cheaper to have 9 small TVs than one giant like LED screen. But like I like the synergy look of one giant thing. I like lots of moving camera shots, swinging camera shots, and big monitors. Like I want like a facility. As you can tell, I've thought about this.
Well, we'll work on that for the next time you come to Full Sail. Maybe we'll have that in place for you by then. I know you're also a clothing guy. Dream wardrobe. What would you be wearing?
All Hugo Boss. Slim.
All right. You already know. It took you like a half a second. You were ready for that. You're probably already doing that, right? All right. Dream speaking engagement. You can speak to any crowd. Who are you speaking to?
I'd like to give those speeches that they do at colleges. I like to do one of those. But at Full Sail, it's weird because all the classes graduate at different times. So instead, I'd want to do the Hall of Fame one where I got to give the speech like to that size crowd.
Well, you're working on that, right? Oh, and there he goes. He said that at the right moment. Well, we'll have to save his final question for another time, but that's Taylor Schaub, everyone. Someone who the only way you can get him to stop talking is to have his computer run out. But it was a fantastic conversation. One lesson he still needs to learn: charge that battery. Keep that in mind, all of you Full Sail students and alums. But it's been a wonderful time here with episode 3 of the Oh, he's coming back. I was just saying my goodbyes, but you can't keep a good man leaving. I was just joking that the only way that we can ever get you to stop talking is to have your battery run out. And also that you still, for all the lessons you clearly have learned, the one thing you haven't learned is to charge your battery. But anyway, since you're back, I've got one more question for you, okay? So Dream Full Sail reunion. So if we could have our reunion anywhere, and we haven't done that yet, by the way, I have some ideas, but what type of event would be the first Full Sail Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting reunion?
Oh, that is so good. I guess it has to be in Orlando though, because you guys are all like in and around Orlando.
Oh, you get to pick wherever you want. It's your dream here. That doesn't mean we're going to do it. You may not have the budget for it, but you can pick whatever you want. So.
Oh, that is so good. And that's the first one you kind of stumped me on, because I was gonna say it would be really, really fun to do like one of those things, because it's the Dan Patrick School, to go to like, how at Disney World they have like Wide World of Sports, but they also have like that NBA experience and all that, to do something like that because it's like sporty themed. But if you were asking me like personally, and we're just going to fit with the theme here, I do a Dan Patrick School golf tournament.
Well, that's funny because that's my idea. So
yeah,
we're gonna be pitching that soon. So great, I love it.
And then that'd be so fun. I can already see the world in which like the prize bag is like a Dan Patrick School hat and like sweatshirt.
You'll go and you'll shoot 62 and you'll get a coffee mug out of it.
Just a lot of Mac McDonald with Tito's. Like he doesn't even get to. He'll play, but also afterwards run the bar and it's just Tito's.
Yeah. No, it'll be great. So I love your thoughts. So that will be fun. Any final thoughts from you before, there is one other thing I want to ask you. So why don't I throw this into you real quick? But your parents, you mentioned your parents at the beginning. How has their encouragement helped you as you've gone through your first couple of years in the business?
Oh, it's been everything, right? Where when people, we all have mentors, right? But Rishi is as much of a great relationship as we have. I can't call you at 12:30 at night if I just had a really, really bad show.
Not to say he hasn't tried.
Yeah, exactly. And need somebody to talk to, right? I would say they both come with different perspectives, because my mom worked behind the scenes and my dad worked on air. Sometimes it is actually more difficult with my dad because as somebody that has done it on a high level like him, he has his own idea of what it looks like. Sometimes I have my own idea of what it looks like, especially in sports. There's been a little more of a kind of disconnect, but overall, it has been everything. There have been times where I just call him and ask him, does this sound good? Is this written well? Is this, is the structure of this, is this something that you would see in San Francisco, like that level of a market? You know what I mean? Because I can ask those questions to him without calling somebody up or texting somebody and looking like a fool and like, I don't know how to do my own job, right? But you don't feel that when it's your parents, and they're so supportive. And the biggest thing for me was when I saw it change from them being proud of me because I was their son to them being proud of me because I was good at my job. And I knew the day that difference was. I know for my dad what the story was, which is the piece I did on the Spanish flu when I'm incorporating drones into my stand-ups and stuff. And I saw it turn for him in where it was, okay, my son's pursuing this career. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's really young. He's hungry. It's fun. I love going through this with him. To, oh, he's got a shot. Like, I can see it because the level of creativity is there. And that was so fun for me to watch that flip. And with my mom, she is my biggest cheerleader in the entire world, truly believes that I could be on like Good Morning America tomorrow. So she's a little too far out there, but you need that too, because you need somebody that's a complete positive source. And what they bring in terms of experience is so reassuring. I can't explain it. I wish everybody had it that goes through this journey, because sometimes you really need somebody to humble you. Sometimes you really need somebody to tell you, hey, you are good. And both of them have done that 100 times over, right? My dad is great at humbling me, but he's also great at picking me up and saying, Taylor, like, look at what you do on a daily basis. A lot of people in this world can't do that. You know, they can't work under those tight deadlines. And yeah, sure, you messed up that guy's name, or, you know, sure, you didn't get in what you wanted to get in, but like, you're the only one that knows that today. You know, maybe, you know, that person's mom, but, and, you know, and tomorrow you're not going to let it happen again, because look at the way you feel about that. And that to me, I'm so thankful. There's probably not another word to use. And I know you've met my parents, and you play golf with my dad, a horrible golfer, but, you know, he cares so much. She cares so much. They're so invested. And I'd say with both of them, they both were so successful in their careers, but there's part of me that does feel like they're living a little vicariously through me now, because, you know, they're both in it, or my mom's retired, my dad's close to retirement, and they're both saying, what dreams did we not get to, that we are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that he gets everything. And that's really cool for me.
That is so awesome. And what a perfect note to end this week's Livin The Dream podcast with. I'd like to thank Taylor Schaub from KGET-TV in Bakersfield, California. No doubt big things are on the horizon for him. Can't wait to see all of you for our next episode coming soon. So enjoy yourself and keep living the dream.